Alright guys, it's time to get some data. We're not going to do anything fancy, we're not going to do any pre-processing or post-processing or analysis. We are literally going to load data into Jupyter. Now, that might sound simple, but the steps to get there can be fairly complicated and are highly variable across different data sources. So you're actually going to be learning one specific way, a very popular way of ingesting data, using a client called Git. So what are we going to do? I went through all of the data sets at my disposal, of which there are, trillions, and I selected, I think, the one that was the most important. It really changed history. And that data set, it came from an article that was published on July 14th of 2016, analyzing the phrases used in hip-hop when it was referencing Donald Trump. So how much positive or negative sentiment there was in rap. Turns out, rap songs don't like Donald Trump as much as a president as they do as a rich guy. So we actually want to pull that data in. Now, thankfully, the organization 538 shares all of their data sets. So you can go and you can download all sorts of fun data sets from 538. We will be using a few of these throughout this course. Now, how this actually works, though, is for all of their data sets, if you actually go, they store their data sets on something called Git. So Git, and this is GitHub, a website that interacts with Git, is a version control system that we won't learn about much in this course, but you will learn about in later courses in your data science curriculum. The basic idea of Git is that we always want to keep an immutable log of every single change that was made to all of our data and all of our code. And so 538, they publish all of their data through Git, and you can see every single change that was ever made to any of their data sets. And you can actually go through and you can see these kind of difference logs that show you exactly what changed. Now, what I've done for this class is I've forked all of their data. So what I've done is you can actually go to the website, so thedatadoctor.io/datasets, and what you'll see is a list here of data sets that we'll be using for the course. So this first one, Introduction to Data Science Lab 1, mentions of presidential candidates and hip-hop lyrics. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this will bring me to GitHub, and this is forked from 538, but it's within my Dan Runfola GitHub account. The only reason to do this kind of copying is now I have a copy of the GitHub account that is the same. It will always be the same. Everyone watching this video will always have the same kind of frozen copy of the data sets. And so that way, for any assignments you might turn in or any numbers that I generate, they'll always be the same. We've kind of frozen it in time. So we want to actually get this into Jupyter. We want to be able to download this data. Now, when we say download this data, we can click on this CSV file within GitHub, and we can get a brief kind of let's call it a preview of what's actually contained here. So we have this data set that we want to be able to analyze in Jupyter. And this first column of data, right, we have an ID. Then we have candidate, so it's what candidate was actually mentioned, the song it was mentioned in, rather, the candidate was mentioned in, the artist, the sentiment, and this is if the mention was positive, negative, or neutral, and we'll talk more about this later in the course. The theme, the album release date, and the actual line in which the mention occurred. So this is the actual data that we are going to load into Jupyter. So let's go ahead and do the first step of that now. So up here in the URL, what you'll actually see is this github.com/danrunfola, and then there's all this other stuff. The actual repository we're looking at is danrunfola/data. So the URL that we want to pull is everything up to the word data. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So Control-C on my keyboard allows me to copy quickly. And now I'm going to go into Jupyter. So this is my Jupyter notebook. I'm going to go ahead and create a new Python environment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a special command, !git, and then the word clone, and then I'm going to copy that URL. So !git, what this does is it tells Jupyter to execute this behind the scenes on something called the console. You don't have to worry too much about that. Clone tells it to make an exact copy of this, and then the actual URL of what I want to copy. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this will take a moment. So what you can see on Jupyter is there's now a little tiny star right here inside of the brackets. That star means that this snippet of code is still being executed, so it has not been completed yet. And let me actually show you what it's doing. So if I go back to my actual Jupyter, you'll see that by doing that pull, there's a new folder that has been created right here called data. And the reason it's called data is because you'll remember on GitHub, where actually the repository name, this is what that is called data. So it's going to create a folder with the same name. So back here, if I click on this folder, you'll see what it's starting to download. And this will not be complete yet, but this is all of the data sets that exist within that repository. So again, we're not actually looking at every single data set today, right? We're only going to look at this one kind of hip-hop based analysis. So we're not going to use all of this data right now, but it's all going ahead and downloading all of it. So we can look for any article. We could click on it. Here's the hip-hop candidate lyrics. So I'm going to click on this one. And you can see the CSV file. If I click on this, I can download it. And I can take a quick look. Now, we could hypothetically do our analysis inside of Excel, right? Like there is a lot of stuff that we could do with Excel that actually, would actually kind of allow you to do some analyses. But we obviously are going to do a lot of large-scale analyses on data sets that are much larger than this in the long run. And so we're going to have to actually learn how to do all of this type of analysis in Jupyter. So the next video, what we're going to do is now we actually have the data. So you can see our git clone. This is no longer a star. It's complete. All of the files have been checked out. We can verify that by looking here at our data folder, and we can see all of the different data sets that were actually downloaded. So the next video that you'll be watching will actually start to teach you how, now that we have the data loaded into Jupyter, how you can actually use a Jupyter notebook to do some analyses.